was supposed to be the trip of a lifetime. 22 seniors from Meadowbrook High, wide-eyed and on the cusp of adulthood, boarded a charter bus for their graduation trip to the mountains. They never returned. No wreckage, no bodies, just silence. For 2 decades, parents clung to hope while conspiracy theorists spun wild tales, until a weather journal was discovered in an abandoned ranger station, and the truth began to claw its way out. The year was 2003, and in the quiet town of Weston, Oregon, excitement buzzed through the halls of Meadowbrook High. The graduating class of 22 students had fundraised for over a year for their dream trip. A week-long adventure at Black Pine Ridge, a secluded mountain retreat tucked deep in the Cascade Range. It was a tradition started decades before, a final send-off to childhood, disconnected from phones, internet, and responsibilities. Chaperoned by 2 teachers, Mr. Halperin and Ms. Vega, the students set off early one June morning on a bright blue charter bus. They were last seen around 10:17 a.m. by a gas station clerk in Maple Hollow, a town 40 miles from the base of the ridge. The clerk remembered them clearly, laughing, buying snacks, posing for pictures by the bus. Then nothing. When they failed to return a week later, the panic began. Calls went unanswered. Rangers found no trace of them at the campgrounds. No tire tracks. No tents. No footprints. A search and rescue effort involving helicopters, dogs, and hundreds of volunteers turned up nothing. It was as if the entire class had vanished into thin air. The case would become one of the most baffling mass disappearances in modern U.S. history. Hannah Westbrook never believed the official story. Her older sister, Emily, had been on that bus. And not a day had passed without Hannah imagining what had happened on that mountain. Now 39 and a true crime author, Hannah had turned her grief into obsession. When a hiker stumbled upon a collapsed ranger station deep in the forgotten parts of the ridge, authorities dismissed the finding. But the hiker had found something inside, a moldering canvas backpack with a water-stained journal. It was Emily's. Hannah's hands trembled as she flipped through the brittle pages, each one threatening to disintegrate under her fingertips. But one entry, scrawled in desperation, changed everything. We should have turned back. Something followed us after the trail split. I don't think Mr. Halperin is still him anymore. If anyone finds this, stay away from the lake. The journal ended there, and Hannah knew she had to go to Black Pine Ridge herself. As Hannah zipped her bag and closed the door to her cabin, she didn't notice the old photograph that slid from the journal's final pages. It showed the group of students posing in front of the lake, but in the background, near the tree line, was a blurry figure. Tall, pale, watching, and it hadn't been there before. Hannah Westbrook hadn't seen Black Pine Ridge since she was 17. Now, standing at the edge of the trailhead with her sister's journal clutched tightly in her coat pocket, she felt the weight of 22 years pressed down on her like fog. The forest had changed. Or maybe it hadn't, but she had. The trees seemed closer together now, the sky above more narrow, like the world was drawing its breath in anticipation. Her guide, a local named Cole Baird, mid-40s, reclusive, and known for tracking off-grid terrain, shifted uncomfortably as he checked their supplies. "This trail's been shut since '03, he muttered, eyes scanning the woods. "No one goes up here anymore. Locals say it's cursed." "Do you believe that?" Hannah asked, testing him. Cole didn't answer. He just pointed to the left. "Your sister's journal says they took the lake route. That's this way." As they hiked, the silence of the woods became oppressive. No birdsong, no rustling animals. Just the crunch of leaves underfoot and the occasional drip of water from the trees. At one point, Hannah paused and looked behind them. Nothing. Just trees. But something felt wrong. 4 miles in, they reached the first strange marker, a rusted sign, almost completely devoured by moss and vines. Hannah wiped away the grime to reveal faded letters. Black Pine Lodge. 3 miles. No unauthorized access beyond this point. Cole frowned. Lodge. There's no lodge on the maps. Emily wrote about a cabin, Hannah said. She said something happened after the trail split near the lake. Maybe this is where it begins. They continued deeper into the forest. The terrain grew more difficult, rocks slick with moss, fallen branches tangled like limbs. Hannah kept rereading Emily's final words in her mind. Something followed us after the trail split. Then, just before nightfall, they reached the split. Two paths diverged, one wider and marked with faded red tape, the other narrow and overgrown. Cole examined both. "We follow the tape?" Hannah hesitated. "No," Emily said after the trail split. "Whatever happened didn't happen on the main trail." She pointed to the narrow path. "We go that way." They set up camp before dark. As Hannah tried to get some sleep in the tent, her mind refused to rest. She kept hearing whispers in the trees. Or was it just the wind? Then, around 2 a.m., she was startled awake by a sound. Footsteps. Not animals. Human. Slow. Measured. Circling. She reached for her flashlight, heart hammering. Suddenly, Cole's voice whispered through the tent wall. "You hear that?" Before she could respond, a scream ripped through the night. It was closed. And it was human. Hannah and Cole burst from their tents, lights scanning the forest. The scream had come from the direction of the overgrown path. As they crept forward, they found something hanging from a branch. A tattered Meadowbrook High hoodie, fresh blood on the collar, and etched into the bark of the tree behind it. "You were warned." The blood was fresh. Cole crouched beneath the tree, examining the hoodie as Hannah stood frozen in place. Her throat tightened as she recognized the stitching on the sleeve, class of 2003, embroidered in faded gold thread. It was Emily's. Could it have survived all these years out here? Hannah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Cole shook his head. "Not in this condition. This is recent. Too recent." The forest was silent again, deathly so, as if it had swallowed the scream and now waited to see what they'd do next. "We're not alone," Cole muttered, standing slowly. "We should go back. Report this." "No," Hannah snapped, the fear replaced by something fiercer. "If we leave now, we may never find them. Something is still here. And I need to know what happened to my sister." Cole hesitated but finally nodded. "Then we follow the path." By morning, the trees grew denser and twisted, their limbs bending unnaturally overhead like they were forming a cage. The light dimmed even though the sun had risen, and the narrow path narrowed further still. They came upon a clearing around midday. In the center stood the remains of a fire pit, long cold and overgrown, but scattered around it were signs of life. Rusted soda cans, broken flashlights, a cracked phone. Hannah rushed to the objects, heart racing. These are theirs. Emily's class. They were here. Cole picked up a plastic name tag. "Brandon Delaney," he read. "One of the seniors, right?" "Yeah." "The class vice president," Hannah said, turning over a charred page from a yearbook. Faces stared back at her, blurred by moisture but still faintly recognizable. Then, she noticed something odd. Beneath the page was a drawing. Scratched into the dirt with a stick. A figure with no face, arms long and dragging, surrounded by trees. Below it, the word, "The Pale One." Cole stood up quickly, scanning the woods. "We need to move." "Why?" "Because I've seen that name before," he said. "It's part of an old Wintama tribal legend. From before this land was settled. They warned settlers not to build near Black Pine. Said something watched the woods. Took people. They pressed on, the air growing colder, the forest heavier. Around 3 p.m., the trail dipped into a ravine, and that's when they found it. A rusted signpost, half fallen, with a wooden arrow pointing right. Lake Marrow, 1 mile. Just beyond it, barely visible through the branches, shimmered the surface of the lake. It was far larger than Hannah expected. Still, black. Its surface like glass. As they approached the shoreline, something crackled beneath their feet. A radio. Crushed and weathered, but unmistakably a school-issue walkie-talkie. The kind teachers used on trips. Cole examined it. Batteries long dead. Then he froze. A faint voice whispered through the static. They looked at each other. The walkie wasn't even on. The voice came again. A girl's voice. "Help. We're still here." Hannah dropped to her knees, breath shallow. Emily, she called into the trees. Suddenly, from across the lake, movement. A shadow darted between the trees. Then another. And then, one of them stepped into view. It was a girl, pale, barefoot, clothes tattered, skin smudged with ash. She stepped closer to the water's edge, eyes vacant and dark. It was unmistakably Rachel Mendez, one of the missing students. But she hadn't aged a day. And when she opened her mouth to speak, the voice that came out was not hers. It was deeper, ancient, and it said, "You shouldn't have come here." Rachel Mendez, at least, the girl who looked like Rachel, stood on the far bank of the lake, unmoving, her vacant eyes locked on Hannah. "You shouldn't have come here," the voice said again. Low, hollow, wrong. Cole stepped protectively in front of Hannah. "We need to go. Now." But Hannah couldn't move. Her mind was spinning. Rachel had vanished 22 years ago. She should have been pushing 40. But that girl by the lake looked exactly like her yearbook photo. No lines. No scars of time. As if time had stopped for her. Then Rachel blinked, slowly, and stepped backward into the trees. Hannah snapped out of her trance. "We have to follow her." "Absolutely not," Cole said. "Whatever that is, it's not her." But Hannah was already moving. The woods on the other side of the lake were even darker. The trees towered like giants, their limbs strangled with moss. Every few feet, they found fragments, a broken compass, a mud-covered sneaker, a torn backpack strap. The forest was littered with the debris of the past. And then, through the gloom, the outline of a building appeared. Twisted, leaning, half consumed by vines and rot. Black Pine Lodge. They approached slowly. The windows were shattered, doors ajar. A hand-painted sign hung crookedly above the entrance. "Welcome Class of 2003. Hannah's breath caught. They stepped inside. The air was thick with mildew and dust. Cobwebs clung to the rafters. And yet, there were signs someone had been here recently. Footprints in the dirt. Burnt-out candles on tables. A trail of dried mud. Did they come here? Hannah whispered. Cole knelt by a wall lined with photo frames, many shattered or blackened by time. He picked one up. It was a picture of the graduating class, taken on the first day of the trip. But someone had scratched out all the faces. All except Emily's. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from upstairs. They both froze. Another sound. Laughter. Childlike. Echoing. Wrong. Cole raised his flashlight and motioned toward the staircase. "We're not alone." Upstairs, the lodge was worse. Floorboards warped, the ceiling sagging. They followed the sound into a large room filled with bunk beds. A girl stood in the corner. Not Rachel this time. Another familiar face. It was Connor McKay's twin sister, Lucy. Her back was to them. "Lucy!" Hannah called softly. The girl slowly turned. Her mouth was sewn shut with jagged black thread. Her eyes hollow, but tears spilled down her cheeks. She pointed to the wall behind her. Cole swung his light toward it. Hundreds of tally marks scratched into the wood. Beneath them, a message. "We never left." Suddenly, Lucy let out a muffled scream, just as something yanked her backward into the darkness. Gone. They ran, heartbeats thundering, down the stairs and into the basement. Something primal drove Hannah forward. She couldn't explain it. Something was pulling her deeper, like the forest had wrapped a hook in her spine. The basement was cold, damp, filled with old supplies, crates, and Cole stopped dead. In the far corner, a crude shrine. Rocks arranged in a circle. Bones in the center. Burnt photographs. And in the middle, a carved wooden idol of a faceless man, arms outstretched. The Pale One. Behind it was something even worse. A large trapdoor, its surface smeared with old blood. As Hannah stepped closer to the trapdoor, her sister's voice echoed softly from beneath it. "Help me!" She turned to Cole, eyes wide with terror and hope. "I heard her. Emily's down there." Cole stepped forward, then froze, his eyes locked on the shadows behind Hannah, and said, No, she's up here. Hannah spun around. Standing at the base of the stairs, illuminated by the faint glow of their flashlight, was Emily, or someone who looked just like her. Same chestnut hair, same sharp cheekbones, same deep green eyes. But her face was expressionless, too still. Her hands hung limply at her sides, like a marionette waiting for strings to move it. "Emily," Hannah whispered, stepping forward, heart caught in her throat. The figure tilted its head. "Leave," it said in Emily's voice. But it wasn't right. It echoed twice, like two voices speaking through the same mouth, one slightly out of sync with the other. Cole grabbed Hannah's arm. "That's not your sister." The lights flickered. The figure blinked and vanished into the shadows behind the stairs. Then silence, until the trapdoor beneath them groaned. Something knocked from underneath. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Then a voice, clearer this time, terrified, ragged. "Hannah, please." That was really Emily. Cole hesitated. "If this is a trick." "It's not," Hannah said, falling to her knees and throwing the trapdoor open. A narrow staircase descended into pure blackness. Without another word, flashlight in hand, Hannah climbed down. The air grew colder with every step. Damp stone walls closed in on both sides. A faint dripping echoed in the distance. At the bottom was a narrow tunnel carved into the rock, lit sporadically by old, flickering lanterns, somehow still burning. Symbols had been etched into the walls. Ancient, primitive, twisting, circular patterns that seemed to pulse when stared at too long. They reached a chamber, and what they saw made Hannah stumble back in horror. Cages. 6 of them. Crude metal bars, rusted and jagged. Inside 2 of them, bodies lay still, barely human anymore. Skin pale, limbs emaciated, lips cracked and bloodied. One of them looked up. "Help," she whispered. "Please." It was Rachel. The real Rachel, not the one they'd seen by the lake. Hannah ran to the cage. "We saw you, outside the lodge." Rachel weakly shook her head. "That wasn't me." Cole was at the next cage. Inside was a boy, Connor McKay, breathing, barely. "How long have you been here?" he asked. Rachel looked up, tears rolling down her face. "We never left. He wouldn't let us." "Who?" Hannah asked. But the answer came before Rachel could speak. A thunderous, guttural moan filled the tunnels. The ground shook. Lanterns flickered and died. And from the end of the tunnel, something began to move. Slow, dragging steps. A sound like skin slapping stone. Then they saw him. The Pale One. He was over 7 feet tall, emaciated yet unnaturally strong-looking, his limbs too long, bending the wrong way at the joints. His face, blank, just stretched skin where features should be. In his chest, embedded and glowing faintly, were shards of mirror. They reflected Hannah and Cole's faces back at them, distorted, twisted, screaming. Rachel screamed, "Don't look into his eyes. He'll take you." The Pale One let out a sound, like 1,000 voices crying out at once, and lunged forward. Cole raised his rifle and fired. The bullet passed through the creature's shoulder, but it didn't bleed. It didn't even flinch. Hannah grabbed an old crowbar from the wall and smashed open Rachel's cage. "We have to go now." She turned to free Connor, but the Pale One was already between them. He raised one long, jagged arm and pointed at her. Suddenly, Hannah's vision blurred. She wasn't in the tunnel anymore. She was 17, on a school bus. Her classmates laughing, music playing, then screaming. The bus twisting off the road. Fire. Darkness. "Hannah!" Cole's voice snapped her back. She was on her knees, crying, but Rachel was pulling her up. "You can't look at him. He feeds off your memories. That's how he traps you here." They ran, deeper into the tunnels, the Pale One's steps echoing behind them. They burst through a hidden tunnel exit, emerging into the misty forest beyond the lake. But something was wrong. The sun was in the wrong place, and the trees were twisted, unfamiliar. Cole looked at his compass. It spun wildly. Rachel's voice trembled. This isn't our world anymore. The sky above was a sickly gray, the sun locked in permanent dusk. The trees loomed taller, their trunks unnaturally straight and blackened like charred bones. Even the air was wrong, thicker, colder, and humming with a low, pulsing sound that vibrated in their teeth. Rachel clutched Hannah's hand as they ran. This is his realm now. We went too far. The Pale One. He brought part of it with him. That's why time stopped. Why we never aged. We're caught between the world of the living and the place where he feeds. Cole checked his compass again. Still spinning. There's no way to track direction, he muttered, looking around. It's a trap. Rachel nodded grimly. He creates loops. Mirrors. You walk forward and find yourself back where you started. He keeps you confused, until you forget who you are. They emerged into a clearing, an exact replica of the one near the lake. But something was different. In the center stood a massive tree, gnarled, ancient, and split at the base. At its roots, more cages, more bones. And inside the bark, faces. Hundreds of them, distorted and stretched in horror, as though trapped in the wood. And at the base, Emily, alive. Barely. Hannah fell to her knees beside her sister. Emily's skin was pale, but her eyes flickered with recognition. I knew you'd come, she whispered, voice dry as ash. He took us. Not all at once. Just picked us off. One by one. And when there weren't enough left, he made copies. Shells. Left them behind. Like the ones we saw, Hannah said, remembering the puppet-like Rachel and Lucy. Emily nodded weakly. They're not people. They're echoes. He uses them to keep outsiders away. Cole scanned the tree. This is where he's anchored. His lair. Rachel stepped forward. He bound us here with blood and memory. He feeds on what we forget. On the stories no one tells. That's why the world let us disappear. Because they stopped remembering. Hannah stood, fury rising. Then we take it back. We burn it down. They gathered what they could. Dry branches, oil from lanterns, even old flare packs from the lodge supply boxes Rachel had scavenged over the years. The fire crackled to life beneath the tree, flames licking at its massive roots. The faces in the bark began to scream. The sky darkened. The forest roared with sound. Branches cracking, wind howling. And from the shadows, the Pale One emerged again. But this time, he wasn't calm. He raged. He lunged toward Hannah, long limbs reaching out. Cole fired a flare into his chest. It exploded in a burst of flame and mirror shards, and for a moment, the creature howled in agony. Emily, with the last of her strength, grabbed one of the burning sticks and drove it into the tree's hollow. The fire erupted. The Pale One screamed, louder than before, his body convulsing, distorting, trying to reform. But it was too late. The fire consumed the tree, and him with it. There was a blinding flash of light. Then, silence. And when Hannah opened her eyes, the sky was blue. Real blue. Birdsong filled the air. The trees were normal. The lake shimmered in the sun. Rachel stood nearby, blinking like someone waking from a long dream. Cole lowered his rifle. We're back. Emily clutched her sister's hand. We're free. In the weeks that followed, authorities returned to Black Pine Ridge. Teams combed the area and found the remnants of the lodge, the cages, and even the burned tree, charred down to the roots. DNA confirmed the identities of at least 7 missing students, and others remained lost. But what they found was enough to open national headlines. The nation mourned the lost class of Meadowbrook High, and for the first time in 22 years, they were remembered. Months later, Hannah stood at the edge of the forest, where a memorial plaque had been erected. In memory of the Meadowbrook 9, lost in 2003, found in 2025, never forgotten again. She traced her fingers over Emily's name, then looked out toward the trees. But as she turned to leave, she noticed something. In the reflection of her car window, a tall, faceless figure watching from the tree line. Still, silent, waiting,